All right. Let's see. So this is the last week. We still have two topics to cover. We'll see how far we can go. And so I decided to cover risk under uncertainty first because this one is the longer one. Time preference is relatively short. We can cover everything if necessary on Thursday. So let's talk about risk first. Now, choice under uncertainty. For the most part of the course, we have assumed that there is no risk. So demand is given, supply is given. You just maximize profit accordingly. There is no risk involved. But towards the end, we have started adding in risk. So, for example, in efficiency wage, we have mentioned how employees might get lucky even if she doesn't work. In mixed strategy national equilibrium in game theory, we are individuals randomized between different actions. So there could be multiple outcomes depending on what they do at that moment. In this class, we'll study risk more formally, exactly how economists consider risk in their models. Okay, so that's chapter 5 textbook, if you have one. So how do you describe risk? The simplest risk you can come up with would be probably a coin toss, right? A coin toss. Heads, you get $1. Tails, you lose $1. How much do you get on average? If you get $1 if you win and lose $1, or if you get $1 with heads and lose $1 with tails, on average you get nothing, assuming the coin is fair, right? If it's a coin with two faces, then obviously you would always be getting $1. But normally, for a coin, you would get 0. Now, 0 is called the expected value, or the mean, or the average in this case. They pretty much mean the same thing in most of the time. That's what you get on average. So that's what I would use to call it mostly. That's what you get on average. Another question you might ask is how far apart different possible outcomes, and you might care about that. It's one thing getting $1 versus losing $1. It's another thing getting $100,000 versus losing $100,000, right? You might be willing to participate in a gamble that gives you $1 versus losing $1, but you probably would hesitate to join a gamble that you either win $100,000 or lose $100,000. So how far apart are the different possible outcomes is also of concern, and that's measured by variance and standard deviations. So these are basic statistics that describe the uncertain outcome. Basic probabilities. So let I denote an outcome, right? For example, I equals to 1 if it's heads, I equals to 2 if it's tails. We will use PRI, probability of I, to denote the chance that something happened. So the probability of heads, PR1, equals to 0.5. And XI would be the payoff. So like, if it's heads, you get $1. If it's tails, you lose $1. So that's the basic notations. Expected value is the average. So expected value is the average. So you have chance of heads times payoff of heads plus chance of tails plus payoff of tails. And if it is anything else, then you keep adding on, keep adding on it. So that's describing what happens with the outcome. Variance is defined as the average of payoff minus average payoff squared. And that can actually, you can simplify it, you can actually break it apart into something like the average of payoff squared minus average payoff squared. Okay, so this is just a formula that you should have learned in secondary school, right? Variance. Yeah. So according to our formula, half of the time you get $1 squared, this is hats. Half the time you get what, -1 squared, that's this part, minus 0 squared, so that's 1. So this coin toss has a variance of 1. So these are just very standard way of describing uncertain outcome. So and then standard deviation, which is defined as the square root of variance. Okay. And it disappeared. Okay, but what make it? I don't understand why it's keep moving forward by itself.
你要我试试学校配的那个。
没关系，再来一遍了。Okay, so the expected payoff of pineapple is 1/3 times. There's a 1/3 chance it's a good year, right? And a good year, pineapple gives 121, and a bad year, that's 2/3 chance of happening. That gives 25, right? So in total, you have I think it's not. Yeah, it's undivisible, right? It's 121 plus 50. That's 171 divided by 3, which would be 57. Yeah. The expectation of growing potatoes is 1/3 of the time. It's a good year, getting 64. 2/3 of the year, getting 49. And that's going to be 64 plus 98, right? 64 plus 98, that's 162. Right? And that's 54. Okay, so pineapple gives a slightly higher average payoff because it's really profitable during good years. Despite the fact that most of the time it's bad, most of the time you'll be expecting a bad year, and most of the time, that means most of the time pineapple is going to give you a low return, but because it gives such a high return during good years, it's still giving you on average a higher return. Variance of pineapple. This one you probably need to use a calculator because it's 1/3 121 square plus 2/3 25 square minus 57 square. Okay. And variance x potatoes is 131/64 square plus 2/3 49 square minus 54 squared. Okay. So you probably need to use a calculator for that. Let's see. So it's 121 times 121 divided by 3 plus 25 times 25 divided by 3 times 2 and minus 57 times 57, so it's 2048, and the other one is 64 times 64 divided by 3 plus 49 times 49 times 2 divided by 3 minus 54 times 54. Okay, you should check the you can punch the calculator to see if that's correct. But the point is, you should see that the variance of pineapple being a lot higher than potatoes. right? Because pineapple, if you grow pineapple, sometimes you get, there's a small chance you win big. There's a large chance that you lose small. Whereas for potatoes, it's more, you win either you win a little or you lose either you win a little more or you win a little less, but it's pretty much the same. So the variance of potato is not very big. Now, if you look at the return, the payoffs, pineapples has slightly higher payoff. Does that mean you want to go pineapple? Not necessarily, right? As I said, if I told the fact that it's positive, the fact that on average you get a positive amount is not necessarily enough to induce you to do that, to take that behavior. If I tell you, look, here is an investment opportunity. Half the time you earn $1 million and $1. Half the time you lose $1 million. On average, you still earn 50 cents. But I don't think anyone in their right mind would participate in that investment, right? Taking a chance of losing 1 million just to earn 50 cents on average is not something that people do. Okay? So average is not a very good indicator of what people would do. Right? Most people would try to weight the expected payoff, the average payoff, against the risk as measured by variance, right? You're only willing to take on such a high variance, you're only willing to take on such risk if the reward is high enough. No one is going to take on risk for reward as small as like 50 cents. So expected payoff, so the average payoff, itself is not a good indicator of which choice is better. So what do we do? So that's why we have the expected utility theory. So in order to compare different choices under risk, we need a way to summarize the uncertain payoff into a certain number. So we somehow want to incorporate both the payoff and the risk into a single number. And the fundamental theory to do this is the expected utility theory. Okay? So let I be some event, right, as before. I could be pineapple or potatoes. In this case, actually, I should be good year or bad year. I should be good year or bad year. Expected utility is defined as the probability of event 1 multiplied by the utility of event 1 plus probability of event 2 multiplied by the utility in event 2, and so on. So the difference with expected value is that you have the utility function inserted. You have the utility function inserted. And the expected utility theory says that when faced with two situations with uncertainty with payoffs x1 and y1, now I just realized I used 3 words. Maybe I should change this sentence. That sounds very hard to read. So when you have two situations and you need to compare them, the individual would only choose one over the other if the first one gives you a higher expected utility. Now, if you look at the formula, expected utility is really just the average utility. That's what it is. Expected utility is average utility. So you choose one choice over the other if the choice gives you higher average utility. That's what it says. You choose by average utility. So it's a very straightforward extension of utility. Without risk, you choose by utility. The higher the better. With risk, you choose by average utility. The higher the better. It's a very simple theory that makes it so appealing. Just choose by average. Higher average, utility. Right? Just choose by average utility. The higher the average, the better. that allows for many interest. Okay, so here's the difference between expected payoff and expected utility. As I said, the difference is now instead of computing the average payoff, you are computing the average utility. This makes sense because we have mentioned before, people do not care just about money, right? Utility function depends on other things. So it makes sense that you want to compute the average utility instead of the average payoff. Okay, so people choose by expected utility. In some cases, we assume that expected utility is the same as expected payoff, which we did in the case of the efficiency wage and in the case of mixed strategy net equilibrium. We basically say that people just care about the payoff. This usually makes the math easier since you don't need to deal with an additional step. However, in many cases, that's not realistic, especially if the payoffs you're talking about is money. People, as I said, people do not just choose by higher average money earned. Otherwise, if that's the case, you would have taken the bet where you earn $1,001 over losing $1. So here is how it works. Suppose the utility function is root I. So root I. What would be the income, what would be the choice the farmer make in the end? Let's see. The expected payoff of pineapple I see, okay. The expected payoff of pineapple is 1/3 chance in a good year times the utility of good year. So that's U121 plus 2/3 chance is a bad year. That's U25. That's 1/3 root 121 plus 2/3 root 25, which very nicely becomes 11 over 3 plus 10 over 3, right? So that's 21 over 3. That's 7. Okay. Sorry. This is okay. Notation. Be careful about the notation. You should have a U here, like that. Expected utility of potato would be 1/3 chance is going to be utility of 64 income and 2/3 chance utility of 49. So that's 1/3 root 64 plus 2/3 root 49, and the numbers work out very nicely. It's 1/3 times 8 plus 2/3 times 7. So that's 22 over 3, which is larger than 7, right? Which means, so farmer would plant potatoes. Okay, so that's how it works. You have the utility function given to you. You compute the average. You compute the average utility. Average utility. So 1/3 chance utility of the income from good year plus 2/3 chance utility of income from bad year. That gives you a value. You compare that value and see which option gives you the highest payoff. Give you the highest utility. And that would be the choice. This choice depends on the utility function used. In the next example, you would see that if we change the utility function to a different shape, you would have a different conclusion. Okay, I squared. What happens if the farmer has the utility function of I squared? What would happen? Let's see. The expected utility of pineapple would be 1/3 chance. Now I'm going to just directly go to the utility part, right? 121 square plus 2/3 25 square. Okay, so that becomes 121 times 121, right? Plus 25 times 25 times 2. Okay, that divided by 3, that's 5297. Expected utility of potato would be 1/3 chance 64 square plus 2/3 chance 49 square. So that's 64 times 64 plus 49 times 49 times 2. Oops, 64 times 64 plus 49 times 49 times 2. Okay, divided by 2. 4449. All right, this time around, potato gives a lower utility, so farmer would plant pineapple. Different utility function represents different preference or risk. Even though the situation is identical across these two farmers, they have different preference. Their utility functions are different. That gives them that result in different choices. Clearly, what happens is you can say one farmer is one farmer doesn't like risk. The previous farmer doesn't really like risk, right? Despite the fact that pineapple gives you a slightly higher payoff on average, he decides to choose potato, which is safer. This farmer, on the other hand, kind of risk-loving. He chooses pineapple, despite the fact that there's high variation between different years. So, utility function determines people's preference for risk. One thing we have to note in particular, though, is that the value of the utility shouldn't be compared across individuals, because the second farmer has the numbers are really high, the utility values are very high because we squared the payoffs. That gives you numbers in the thousands, whereas in the previous case it's only in the dozens. That doesn't mean this farmer is like 10 times happier. The utility number should only be compared within an individual. So higher is better, but if you can't compare across individuals, right? You can't compare across individuals. So now let's think more carefully about why different utility functions would result in different choices. So one farmer prefers more risk, one farmer prefers less risk. Why would the function result in that? Why would the functions result in this behavior? Okay, so I've already mentioned all that. Generally, you can separate people into 3 types. Risk neutral, those who don't care about risk. Typically, we do that in cases of efficiency wage. We did that in mixed strategy Nash equilibrium. Although you don't necessarily need to do that. You can, in those cases, you can also assume people have a particular risk preference.
It's just that for simplicity, we did not do that. In economic models, we typically assume that companies are risk neutral, that they are only aiming for average return. That's an assumption. Whether it's true or not is something you would have to consider in a case-by-case basis. Generally, companies have a much larger capacity to absorb risk than individuals, because companies, after all, is a business, and they usually have the ability to raise money. So it's not uncommon for companies to weather a few years of bad business and then finally manage to earn a lot of money, right? Some projects would involve large upfront investment. For example, before you can actually extract crude oil from a well, you will need to invest typically billions of dollars into the infrastructure around it. The billions of dollars of infrastructure would be a loss for the oil company initially. But then it's because the oil company is aiming for the billions of dollars worth of crude oil that it can eventually extract. It is willing to suffer the loss upfront. So companies, we tend to see them as risk neutral. They just look at, well, whether you can get a profit in the end. The second type would be risk averse. So these are individuals and entities that dislike risk. All else equal, they prefer less risk. This is the usual assumption on investors and individuals in general. We don't like to think that investors in the stock market are gambling their money, right? We don't think they are looking for thrill. Rather, they are looking to get the highest return by taking on as less risk as possible. So that would be risk averse. People do not like risk. Finally, there are people who are risk loving. These are people who prefer riskier outcomes. Gamblers would be one example. Why would you want to gamble? Despite knowing the fact that on average, you can't win. The best example would be something like Mark 6 or Macball. So Mark 6 in Hong Kong, so that's the lottery in Hong Kong. Mark 6 has no skills, right? There's absolutely no skills. It's completely random. So the only reason you play Mark 6 would be you're risk loving. You're trying to look forward. You're kind of excited by the prospect of winning a large sum of money, even though on average you probably going to lose. So Mark 6 is a good example. I think there are a lot of games in casinos, where the average payoff would be negative. I mean, it makes sense, right? If the average payoff in a casino is positive, then the casino will be losing money to you. So obviously, the average payoff in casino has to be negative. Right? But people go. So it's suggesting they're looking for risk. For things like for some games like blackjack and horse racing, that's less certain. Blackjack, in blackjack, there's like a almost 49% chance of win, or 49. The return is about almost 49% chance you're going to win. So if you have a 49% chance you're going to win, that's not too far from breaking even. And if you're a particular skillful player, there might be a chance that you will be able to actually earn a positive return. So they're professional poker players. So those players are in for the money. So they're not necessarily risk loving. Similarly, in horse racing, there have been reports, local newspapers, that it's possible to use statistical techniques to try to predict the outcome of horse races in Hong Kong. So I've heard, like, at least I personally know two statistics professors overseas who participate in horse racing gambles in Hong Kong for companies, not for themselves. Like, there's companies that invest in Hong Kong, so, like races in Hong Kong. So in those cases, they're probably looking at it as an investment, not as a risk. They're not trying to get some fun out of the horse races, rather than investment. So, but typical gamblers probably looking for risk. And that the behavior depends on the shape of the utility function. In the risk neutral case, the utility function should be a straight line. And it makes a lot of sense. What it says is that your utility is the payoff. That's what it says. Your utility is the payoff, or a scalar multiple of the payoff, right? 1, 1, 2, 2, something like that, right? In this case, the expected utility is the same as expected payoff. The individual would choose according to the expected payoff. In other words, he's going to choose the option that gives him the highest payoff on average. The most money, usually, that means the most money. Whichever option gives him the most money on average, that's his choice. Risk averse is a concave function. Concave function. What it means is that more money doesn't make you proportionately happier. One perhaps is, for example, maybe 1 is 1. But 1 is 1, but 2 is just 1.5. The additional utility you get from having more money does not increase proportionally. It's increased slower and slower. So that's why you don't want to take risks. Having a lot of money doesn't make you that much happier. That's why you don't want to take risks. Conversely, because having what this utility function says is that losing money makes you really sad. Losing money makes you really unhappy, right? Getting more money doesn't make you happier, but losing money makes you very unhappy. So you don't want to take risks. You don't want to take risks. Finally, risk-loving. Risk-loving are individuals that have you get increasingly more utility from more money. Right? For example, maybe 1 is 1, but 2 would be something like 3. Because the individual gets proportionately more utility from more money, there's more chance that gives him a large amount of money. It's going to make him really, really happy. That's enough to compensate for the high chance of losing small amount of money. That tiny chance that I'm going to win Mark 6 is going to make me the happiest guy in the world. So I don't care that I might be losing $10 every week. Yeah. In some sense, that has to be what's in people's minds. Rationally, I think most people understand that Mark 6 is a money-losing behavior, right? Buying Mark 6 is a money-losing behavior. No one expects yourself to win Mark 6, but still people buy. And we're not talking about like people with like little education. In plenty of companies, people like kind of put like people like colleagues put together money and buy markets together. That has to be because you're basically buying, you're imagining there's a small chance you're going to win, and that's going to make you really happy. So small chance of, because the utility is going up very quickly. It's more even so even if there's only very small chance of winning, that's enough because you get really, really happy by winning a lot of money. Conversely, that also means that you're not going to be very unhappy if you lose some money. Because the utility, if you look at it, the utility function is kind of flat towards the 0 point, right? So basically, when you have no money, losing that little amount doesn't make you very unhappy because you have. So that's what it says. So most of the contrast you'll see is between number 2 and number 3, risk loving and risk neutral. Risk loving and risk averse. Concave, risk averse. Convex, risk loving. From the diagram, you can know what's the present risk. So that's why in cases, so if you need to determine whether a utility function is risk loving or risk averse or not, one easy way is to draw a few points. Very often in economics, at least, the functions are simple enough that if you plot 3 points, you would know the risk preference already. If you plot 3 points like this, okay, let's say 1, 2, 3, right? You kind of already see it's a convex function, right? You kind of already see it's a convex function. So you already know this is going to be risk averse. Similarly, if you plot 3 points here, you kind of already know it's a convex function. Then you already know it's risk loving. So it's actually quite easy to figure out without any math. Just plot a few points. Another way you can use is to use calculus. We can talk about it in a moment. So besides drawing, there are 2 other ways. One is try to see what the individual would do with a fair bet. Half chance of winning money, half chance of getting nothing. So why did I use 2, 0 instead of 1 and -1? The reason why I use 2, 0 and instead of 1, -1, they are the same because they're basically the same. The reason is some utility functions cannot take negative values. For example, log function. The log function is only defined on positive range, right? Log -1 is undefined. So log function is very common utility function you see in courses. So this makes it better. 2 and 0 instead of 1 and -1 instead of 1 and -1. But the idea is see what the individual would do in a fair bet. Is he going to take the bet or not? Risk neutral individuals should not care. Taking the bet should be the same as taking the average. So if you give me the option of getting $2 half the time and getting no money half the time versus just getting $1 for sure, risk neutral individual would say, doesn't matter. I'm happy with either. Risk averse individual would say, give me the $1, I don't want to take the risk. That makes sense for him. That makes sense for her because that's the average is $1. The average is $1. Why take the risk? You're taking on the risk for no additional gain. So a risk averse individual would obviously say, forget about the risk, just give me the $1. On the other hand, the risk-loving individual would say, I'm going to take the gamble because he loves risk. So the average is the same, but he gets the chance of winning big. So he likes it. So he's going to take the gamble. So that's another way you can separate the three. Look at what happens with a fair bet. Okay. And finally, finally there's a method of calculus. So we're also gonna do that, since we have covered everything in Math 1 already. So we can start using calculus. So let's start with using a fair bet, right? If you use a fair bet, half the time the individual is going to get $2. Half the time the individual is going to get nothing, right? That's half root 2 plus half root 0, which is just root 2 over 2, right? Root 2, that's root 2 over 2. What about just getting $1 for sure? Getting $1 for sure would be root 1, which is just 1. And root 2 over 2 is going to be smaller than 1, which equals to root 1, which is utility of 1. So this individual would prefer the safe option, as we expected. What about I squared? Half 2 squared plus half 0 squared equals to 2, right? 4 over 2. So that's bigger than 1, which equals to 1 squared, which is utility of 1. So the second individual is risk-loving. He's going to choose the risky option in the fair bet. If you can also use calculus. What you're looking for is whether the second derivative is the second derivative increasing or decreasing. You're looking for the second derivative, right? Not x, sorry. In this case, it's I. The second derivative in our case is ddx root I, right? Which is ddx half I negative half, and that becomes negative 1/4 I negative 3/2, which would be smaller than 0. That's it. That tells you that the slope is decreasing. The slope is decreasing. The slope is still positive, but it's decreasing. So that gives you this shape. The pen stopped working. Maybe it's out of battery. Let's try again. The second one is second derivative of I squared, and that would be 2. So that's bigger than 0. So you have a increasing function. Right? So these are the 3 methods you can try. Calculus obviously going to be the most elegant. Calculus is going to be the most elegant. Graph, so you can use, if you can't use calculus, you can try to draw a few points, or you can try to use a fair bet, right? Okay. All right. Okay, so risk premium is the concept, is how much individual is willing to get the average outcome instead of facing risk. I think we didn't actually have any questions on risk premium. I don't think we have any questions on risk premium. I don't think so. So, okay, so risk premium is a very important concept in insurance and finance, because so that relates to if you're thinking about it as an insurance, that's how much money the individual is willing to pay to get rid of the risk. But if you think about it in finance, then you think it's the opposite. How much do you have to pay investors in order for them to take on risk? But it's the same idea, right? Insurance, because insurance, you are helping people to reduce risk. Whereas in finance, you're typically wanting people, you're trying to convince investors to take on risk. So in both cases, you're talking about what's the price of the risk in the end. That's what you're asking for. What's the price of the risk? And we don't actually have any computational questions on that. So let's skip this part. Okay, so this is what I actually want to talk about. Now, investment return. The blue line is the Hang Seng Index, the return of Hang Seng Index from 2003 to 2013. That's the blue line. The red line is certified deposit. As you see, stock market, so the 1 month return of stock market is very variable, very volatile. If you buy stock in the beginning of the month and sell it at the end of the month, this is what you will see over the years. Now, sometimes that earns you a lot of money. The highest ever return of HSI within the span of 10 years is a 17% return in 1 month, somewhere around 2009. But that was preceded by one of the historical lowest return in Hang Seng Index, which is a negative 20%, negative 22% in one single month. Imagine you lose over 1/5 of your wealth in a single month. That's how severe it was. Now that was obviously in 2000. That was obviously at the height of the financial crisis. Losing 1/5 of your wealth in a single month. So stock market, if you look at it this way, it's actually quite risky, right? It's actually quite risky. Sometimes you earn big, sometimes you lose big. Certified deposit, one month certified deposit, the highest return within that period of time is 0.23%. 0.23%. So that means if you deposit $100, you're going to get 23 cents in return. 23 cents in return. The lowest return is 0. There is no return in putting money in certified deposit. Now, what this tells you is, what I want to show you is, if you want no risk, there is going to be pretty much no return. No one is going to compensate you for doing nothing, right? Putting your money in a bank pretty much earns you no income. Everything, in order to earn money with your income, you would have to take on risk, like buying stocks or even starting your own business. Okay. So returns comes from risk. The average return of Hang Seng Index is positive. If you look at the blue line, you kind of imagine taking the average. It is positive. Something about stock market is, if you really take the average, now the red line this time around, the red line is 5-year average return of Hang Seng Index. This is actually now even the stock market is very volatile in the short run, yet over the long run, it's surprisingly stable. Over 5-year duration, which is not very long if you consider investing for your retirement, right? If you're investing for retirement, you're talking about 10 or 20 or 30 years. So 5 years is not too long of a life. If you buy some stock in your first year, by the time you graduate, it's pretty much 4 years already. 5-year Hang Seng Index return is very stable. You pretty much never lose money. Huh? Well, if there is, well, whether stock market has mean reversion is something that's a very good question. Typically, actually, it's random walk, so it doesn't. So, but then if you take, so what it does say is what you call law of large numbers. Over the long run, things are quite stable, which is similar to what you did in Math 1 assignment 3, right? And Math 1 assignment 3. As I said, the Markov chain. So over the long run, stock market is actually quite stable, which is why it's used finance like investment advice would typically tell you don't want to invest in too short a duration because you're taking on enormous risk by doing so. Right? As a small investor, especially if you don't think you can spend time looking at the stock market, it's much better to hold for a long duration. Now that we have talked about the standard material, it's time to talk about violations of the standard material. What I've just told you, expected utility theory, is the canonical model in economics. But canonical model exists for a long time, and today we know people's behavior very often do not conform to the model. It's an ideal model. Okay? It's an ideal model. It makes sense. Make decision based on your utility. If there's risk, use average utility. Makes a lot of sense. But the fact that it makes sense logically does not mean that's what happens in reality. People's brain does not operate necessarily in such logical manner. So, violations. So I'm going to ask you a series of questions. Let's think about what you're going to do. Which of the following would you prefer? $3,000 for sure versus $4,000 with an 80% chance and no money with 20% chance. Okay. You can either get $3,000 for sure or there's an 80% chance you're going to get $4,000. Okay, so let's see. Think about what you choose. Who is going to choose the first one? Ooh, a lot. 1, 2, wow. Okay, that's what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or maybe just 20. Alright, who's going to choose the second? 1, 2, just okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10, 11. Like, okay, something around, I think, 20 versus 10. Alright? That's okay. What about this pair? $3,000 with 25% chance and $4,000 with 20% chance. Who's now going to choose the first one? No one. Second one? Okay, 30. How do I know that's 30? I don't even need to count. I just add up the previous ones. Okay. So this choice is typical. If this is a very famous experiment. This is one of a series of very famous experiments on probabilities, and your answer is actually quite standard. Like most people would prefer $3,000 for sure in the previous case, and most people would prefer $4,000 with 20% chance. 20% chance in this case, except it's not possible under expected utility. According to it, if you are actually having any utility function, as long as you have a utility function, And if you're really making decisions based on average utility, you can't behave this way. As much as common as it is, you can't. Why? It's quite easy to show why it's not allowed. Let's see. Right? Okay. So what you're telling me right now is that a 20% chance of getting $3,000 plus 80% chance of getting no money is worse than, 25% chance, 25% chance, 75% chance. This is worse than 20% chance of getting 4,000 plus 80% chance of getting no money. That's what you're telling me. I don't need to specify what U is. Any U would work. Any U that satisfies this equation would work. So that's what you tell me. The average utility of the first choice is worse than the average utility of the second choice. Right? Now, let's multiply both sides by 4. Let's multiply both sides by 4. Then 0.25 becomes 1. 0.75 times 4 is 3, right? Yeah, 3. 7, 8 is 2, 8, yeah? Then you have 0.8. And then you have 3.2. We're going to subtract both sides by 3u0. You're left with, guess what? Utility of $3,000 for sure is worse than 80% chance of getting $4,000, which is exactly the previous choice. Okay. Why is this happening? Okay. The reason is, if you are truly making decisions based on average utility, all you care about is the ratio of chances. That's the property of average. Average depends on combination of different chances, and when you scale up all the probabilities, everything scales up proportionally. What that tells you is not that you are irrational. Now this is something I have to emphasize. Expected utility is a theory. It's not the truth. What I've just shown you is people do not behave according to the theory, which means the theory is wrong. Not that you did something wrong. The theory is wrong. What's wrong is that it assumes people use averages when people clearly do not. In particular, in this case, I think there's a very strong effect. $3,000 for sure does not sound like 20% more, like 20% more than 80%, right? $3,000 for sure is for sure, right? It doesn't. So 100% chance is not just 20% more than 80%, right? For sure is for sure. It feels different. That's something that the model cannot capture. So as I said, this is a famous experiment, and in a published study, 80% picked $3,000 for sure from the first pair, with 35 picking 3,000 from the second pair. So you are actually more extreme. No one actually picks the 3,000 in the second case. The experiment suggests that people are very sensitive to small change in probability from one to another number, right? 100% chance. If I go from 100% chance to 95% chance, that feels like a big difference. But if I go from 65% to 60%, that doesn't feel so much like a big difference. So people are really sensitive to certain outcomes. People are really sensitive to certain outcomes. Another one. Okay, this one. Suppose there are 90 balls inside a box. It is known that 30 balls are red, 60 balls are different colors, blue or green, but you don't know the proportion. Right? All you know is the number of reds. Okay, so this is a box, right? It's known that there are 30% of the balls are red. Oh, sorry, like 1/3 of the balls are red. The rest are of unknown colors. Okay, that's what all you know. Now I'm going to draw a ball out of the box. Consider the following two bets. Bet A, you get $100 if the ball I draw is red and nothing otherwise. Okay, red ball, money. Others, nothing. Bet B, you get $100 if the ball I draw is blue and nothing otherwise. Who is going to bet on the first one? Red ball. Like 1, 2, something like that. Like a lot of people. Okay. Second one. Anyone bet on the second one? Blue balls. You don't know how many blue balls there are. No one. Something like 20-1, 20-0. Bet C. You get $100 if the ball I draw is either red or green. Either red or green. So you actually get money if it's one of the two colors. Versus, you get $100 if the ball is blue or green. Right? So bet C, you get money if it's red or green. Bet D, you get money if it's blue or green. Who's going to choose the first one? No. Second one? Oh, that's easy. So this is the easy choice. Okay, once again, this is a very common choice, but it's not allowed under expected utility. Why? Now, the reason why it's not allowed is when you tell me, since the money you get from red balls and blue balls are the same in the first case, right? Is it blue or is it green in the first question? It's blue, I think, right? I think it's blue. Right? When you tell me, when you choose red over blue, what you're telling me is the chance of getting red, which we know is 1/3, times the utility of $100 is bigger than the probability of getting blue balls times the utility of $100, right? Red we know is 1/3, and so that we don't know what the blue ball is. So in the end, what you're telling me is essentially the chance of getting a blue ball is smaller than 1/3, right? That's what you're telling me. You pick the red ball instead of the blue ball. Since they both pay the same money, according to expected utility, that tells you that your guess is there are fewer blue balls than red balls. But then you tell me you prefer blue plus green over red plus green, right? Okay. Right. Did I ask, is it red plus green or blue plus green? Red plus green, right? Right, so red plus green. Okay, now, so that means you are telling me that you're preferring essentially 1/3 chance the utility of 100 plus some probability of green utility of 100, right? That's worse than probability of blue utility of 100 plus probability of green utility of 100, and in this equation the green should cancel out. This cancels out. So now you're telling me that, and then we can cancel out this part too. You're telling me that you think there are more blue balls than green balls. So more blue balls than red balls. So in one case, you're telling me you think there are more red balls than blue balls, and then the other case, you're telling me you think there are more blue balls than red balls. So that could certainly, so that obviously doesn't make sense. This experiment is called the Ellsberg paradox. It's a very famous experiment. And your choice is completely normal. Once again, what's wrong is the model. What's wrong is the model, not your choice. Can you tell me why you don't want, why are you betting red balls in the first case, and why are you betting blue and green in the second case? How many red balls? What's the proportion of red balls? 1/3. What's the proportion of blue balls? We don't know. What's the proportion of blue and green balls? 2/3. What's the proportion of red and green balls? We don't know. So an alternative explanation of what you're doing is you are betting on what you know. That's what you're doing. You're betting on cases where you have objective probability that you can rely on. That's what people like to do. We don't like risk, but we hate unknown risk even more. We hate unknown risk even more. So there's a very strong tendency for people to choose options where there is at least objective risk measures that they can use. So this is called ambiguity aversion, and this is for much more advanced course.